So good morning, everyone. Welcome to those of you here in the Kadampa as well as online. We've got folks on Zoom as well as YouTube. So Venerable Amy should be arriving in about 5 more minutes or so. So we'll take this time to just sit and quiet our minds and prepare for her arrival. When she does arrive, we'll stand. And for those of you who feel comfortable doing so, you can join us in prostrations. Don't feel obligated at all. You can just stand and think positive things, think positive thoughts while we're doing that. And then after the teacher sits, then we'll sit as well. And she may or may not open it up for questions. If she does, so we'll wait for her to do that. And if she does open it up for questions, since we do have folks on Zoom and YouTube streaming with us, we just want to make sure that they hear as well. So just wait for a microphone to come. We'll have maybe 1 or 2 microphone runners. So just wait for that and then, hold it kind of close and use the microphone so everyone on Zoom and YouTube can hear. Any questions or anything? Nope. Okay, we'll get started momentarily. For those of you who are going to come back for the last session of the weekend workshop, we will break for lunch from noon to 1:30. And if you happen to be here, stay and have a bag lunch or run off site and grab something and come back. If you go off site, just be back about, let's say 1:20-ish, so that we're here and ready when Venerable Amy returns. I think that's it. So again, good morning. Those of you just joining us online on Zoom and YouTube, we are awaiting Venerable Amy's arrival. It should be within the next, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes or so. So just hold tight and prepare your mind for the teachings. She'll be here shortly.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. So we are awaiting Venerable Amy's arrival. She should be here momentarily. So those of you on Zoom and YouTube, just hang in there and be patient. And those of us in the Gampa will start to decrease conversations and get our minds ready for the teachings. She should be here shortly. And just a quick reminder for folks on Zoom, once Venerable Amy does arrive, if you can have your camera on, that's awesome. She does have a view of everyone on Zoom. You see that red TV sitting next to her throne. That's her Zoom view, so she does like to see everyone. So we do ask you have that on, and then also just Zoom etiquette. It's as though you're here in the Gampa with us, so try not to eat and drink and all that stuff. If you do need to get up and go do something, though, just turn your camera off and come back. It's fine, totally fine. Okay, one more thing for those of us in the Gampa that I just heard. We're going to do a group photo after this morning's teaching. So please stick around and we'll join Venerable Amy for a group photo. So she'll be sitting on her throne up there and we'll gather around. Some folks can sit on the stage. Some folks can stand around behind her and just arrange yourself. Tall people get in the back, please. Short people get in the front. And I think David Shrivel will be taking the picture, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you, David. Oh, Joanna, I hope you feel better. Venerable Amy's car has arrived. I'll let you know when she's actually in the building. Okay, we can go ahead and stand.
So we normally start with some inspiring prayers, and it helps us set a motivation for whatever activity we're doing. And for us, that is the foundation of this tradition, as many of you know, is to help all living beings, to benefit beings as much as possible. Humans, animals, like that, insects. And that's the premise of Tibetan Buddhism, called the Mahayana tradition. Maha, greater, yana, vehicle, greater vehicle, really universal vehicle. My heart fully open, okay? Mind fully open, spacious, peaceful, so I can really kind of put my experience out there to what's happening out there with other people and see who needs help, can I help, things like that. Welcome, Don. Long time, one of the founders of the center are here. It's so sweet. Very nice. I rejoice. Thank you so much. So take a moment and let's just close our eyes for a moment. And think about this motivation to benefit all living beings. And what happens as a human being is in our interest to help others, especially if friends or family come to you needing help or struggling. And we do advise and act in the best way we can, but we also realize we are limited, and we often don't know what to say or what to do. We often think negative thoughts when we don't want to. So in this tradition, as a Buddha, which means fully awakened being, from that high level of realization, you have every perfect capacity to benefit all living beings. And your whole focus of your body, speech, and mind is directed in that way. Every moment you live and breathe. And the byproduct of that is you're in a completely blissful state of consciousness every moment. So that's our path in this tradition. So take a moment, if you like that, feel free to include that in your motivation for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day, or at least putting your mind in the most positive space. And with this motivation in mind, let's recite some of our prayers.
Okay, so you'll turn to page 34 in the Gold Prayer Book. There should be one in the chair, either in front of you or behind you, that you can use. And we start typically, Venerable Amy, with Shakyamuni Buddha mantra and run through. Do you want to go ahead and do what we normally do?
Okay. Sure, sounds great.
Do you want to lead it or do you want me to? Me, okay. So at the top of page 34 in the Gold Prayer Book, we've got Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. Feel free to just listen or say it with me.
And so imagine, those of you that would like, imagine we have images of the Buddha here and Buddha here. So imagine from his heart streams of golden light coming into you, coming into your forehead, totally blessing you, granting you all his realizations and blessings as you recite the mantra. You can visualize like that if you like.
Taya ta
Om Mune Mune Ma Mune Soha Taya ta Om Taya ta Om Mune Mune Maha Mune Shoham.
And then we'll do Medicine Buddha stanza and mantra directly below that. Bhagawan, with equal compassion for all, whose name, when merely heard, dispels the suffering of the lower realms, dispeller of disease and the three poisons, I prostrate to Medicine Buddha lapis light. Tayata Om
Bekanze, Bekanze, Maha Bekanze, Bekanze, Ranza Samongate Soha. Tayata Om Bekanze, Bekanze, Maha Bekanze, Bekanze, Ranza Samongate Soha. Tayata Om Bekanze, Bekanze, Maha Bekanze, Bekanze, Ranza Samongate Soha.
And then the four immeasurables, still on page 34 in the Gold Prayer Book.
So we want to send these immeasurable prayers out to all the beings on the planet. Now many are struggling. And in this order that we read, it's immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. So they're immeasurable because you don't want to limit those going out from your heart, from your consciousness, but it's also immeasurable based on the number of countless living beings we're sending them out to. We don't want to limit that either. And so some of you have already heard this before, but because there's some newer people here who may be, I'm not sure anymore, the films are old now, Star Wars watchers. I don't know if people are familiar with those films. So the four immeasurables are at the end of the Return of the Jedi. The Ewoks are chanting it in Tibetan because George Lucas is a Buddhist. And those films were based on Buddhist principles. So you can hear it clear as day in the original version. I don't know if should be in the digitized version, I'm not sure. So this way, if you're that sort of filmmaker, now millions of people have that imprint of the four immeasurables in their consciousness, like that. So you hear the Samchen Tamje Dewa Dang, like that. It's very interesting. So let's send these prayers out to everybody. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So this is the prayer we need right now. So we'll talk more about this also this afternoon, but a lot of people are coming to me now, and you and the centers, of they're struggling, and the outer manifestation of our reality in our world is looking, it's a little challenging. It's been challenging before, by the way. This is not a new thing, but we're in a kind of interesting time, and it's disturbing a lot of people that I know. So people that can't sleep, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And so what happens is, in that phase where you feel threatened, and then you become afraid, right? And then what happens is you don't really want to look at the fear, and it's very uncomfortable feeling. So anger and hatred come out as a bodyguard. And it's really not cool sometimes to tell people that you feel afraid. So you don't want to say that, but then you posture yourself and go, I'm okay. You're a jerk. It's him, he's doing it. And then we blame externally. Okay? And you have to check yourself, how does the blaming externally work in your world? Do you feel better doing that? And then what happens is you blame externally. So you vomit out all this junk, okay, from my fear, okay? And there's something underneath fear. What's underneath fear? We said it yesterday. What do you think's underneath fear when you feel anxiety's there, and it's a C word? Control. Okay, I want control. I want to be in control. And sometimes that means we feel like we want to control other people. We want to control situations, okay? How's that working for you? What can you control? Your mind. So Tibetan Buddhism says the only thing you can control is your mind, okay? How's that going for you? Right? Okay, he's not. Some people it's going okay. Good. You know? Most people are looking at me like deer in the headlights now. Control my mind? Are you kidding me? Okay, so sometimes it goes well, and sometimes it doesn't go well, right? You're having a meltdown. You know, you're yelling at somebody, you snap at somebody, you're depressed in your room, you're crying, and all of it's okay. We're human beings. This is our situation. Okay? So, but what happens is Buddhism has nobody external to blame. Buddhism's teaching is everything comes from the mind. Okay, that's my teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the man on the right over here, who passed away a year and a half ago. His main thing of the last 5 to 10 years is everything comes from your mind. Okay, it's radical. It's radical because we have Judeo-Christian traditions. There's a God, the Creator, created everything. I know that's how I was raised. Many of you were raised like that. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But you check. You want to check. For me, I checked. I had a strong belief in God when I got into this, when I got into Buddhism. Strong belief in God. Okay? But then somebody else is at the helms, at the controls, doing it to me and for me. And see, I didn't have as much control, and I was really checking. Everything comes from the mind, looking at. And so let's just say you look at an experience. Look at likes and dislikes that we have. You know, how many people, raise your hand, how many people here like eggplant? Raise your hand. Okay? How many do not? Okay, is it the eggplant's fault? He likes eggplant. Right. But you know, so you go, ooh, eggplant. But somebody else likes it and goes, oh, eggplant, great. Okay, but we do this all the time. I don't like him, but somebody else really likes him. It's your wife's fault. There you go. I'm going to tell her that, right? And then we do, I don't like her. She's doing this to me, but somebody else loves this person. So you have to keep checking. Buddhism says it's your experience, it's your attitude. Creates your reality. So you can choose and have a very nice external reality based on all the positive things you're doing with your body, speech, and mind. That's what Buddhism says. So what happens is when you start blaming and when your world starts shutting down and you're angry and fearful and you want control and it's not working, the four immeasurables. Reach for that, and why not send that out to the planet? Instead of blaming, this person, you're really challenged by somebody, may you have happiness and the causes of happiness. You know. Now I know that initially you might be clenched. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. Okay, but sometimes we fake it, and there's, what did I just read, this psychologist, we have this thing, fake it till you make it. That's an expression in the United States, okay? Fake it till you become that. So initially we're forcing, but if you keep doing over and over and over, eventually you'll be like, may you have happiness and all the causes of happiness. It will come, and it will be here. It will be genuine. That's how practice works. That's why we call it practice. Meditation is a type of practice. We practice stuff. Think about what you practice every day in your lives. Right? Think about how much you spend doing an activity, how much you practice. Think about the practice of this. And what are you doing with this? What's it doing here? What does it do here and here? When you're all day, you know, what was I saying yesterday? I don't know, the Candy Crush? You're destroying your mind with Candy Crush, okay? Now we take breaks. Okay, but just think about what are your habits, what are you practicing every day? Beneficial and uplifting for your mind and heart, or I feel lazy after it. People told me they were calling me during COVID. That was a strong time, right? So a lot of calls and right now, you know, when things get really tense outside and difficult for people, Dharma centers are thriving. Everybody comes to the church and the synagogue when things aren't going well, then they get religious. We need help. So we were, people were calling us, and in COVID, I was getting a lot of messages, calls, contact with people, and a natural thing is a lot of people were binge watching shows, videos, because you're home all day, you couldn't go out, couldn't do anything, and then people got into a habit. Many people I know binge watching, and I kept saying to them, so how do you feel after the 6 to 8 hours of that? And they said, first of all, they're overeating, in bed with the neck crank like this, so they're not feeling the neck. I'm having neck problems now, they said, after 10 weeks. I'm like, yeah. And then there was other people I knew started to have digestive problems. My friend's daughter, digestive problems, serious digestive problems, and all these things related to that, right? So it ends up that part of it was because she spent this time at a table with the screen, the tablet there, binge watching stuff, eating like this. How can you digest food when you're crunched over? So all these things were, so please check your habits. Look at what you're practicing. So can we practice the 4 immeasurables instead? How many of you drive? Most people here. Did anyone ever cut you off? Your response? Any negative hand gestures happening, perhaps? Okay. So again, this is another thing of, instead of that, why not practice person? And it's okay to observe. Person cuts you off. I observe in my mind, what a jerk. That's okay. You can, we're human. What a jerk, or something perhaps worse, okay? And then you have happiness and all the causes of happiness. And what happens if you let somebody in for a change? What are you, 20 seconds later? Is that a problem? And what if it's a friend of yours? They turn around and you see it's a friend. Very happy to let them in, even though they didn't put their signal on, right? I'm from Philadelphia. Some people say tough town, Philadelphia. Okay. So my brother, at one point I was driving with him. I was the passenger. He's a good driver. And I knew we needed to get over one lane. And so I said to him, finally, are you going to put your signal on? And he goes, why? So everyone can pull up and not let me in? That's Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, okay? So, but seriously, we have to start practicing a little bit. People I know have notes on the dashboard of the car to remind you. It could say, you put it in your own words, motivation, love. I know one student, they're really on the dashboard, they have death. Death, just so that they slow down 5 miles per hour, just because they tend to speed. So, but these are the things we really want to practice, because it keeps your mind balanced and peaceful. We can do that, and that's what we need to do right now more than ever, instead of contributing to more negativity out there. So when I open my mouth and vomit some negativity out to you, first of all, it's like my opinion is important, but you might be in an okay space, right? But then you hear my negativity, and then you're kind of like, oh, or you may not have ever had that thought, that negative thought about that person, but now you hear my thought, and it affects. So we have to be really careful with that. So think about certain positive things you can put out there. And I know it's challenging. 7-limb prayer. Thank you.
That's page 35. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of others to the great enlightenment. Refuge.
Great.
Refuge is on page 34.
So can we get the refuge before the teachings, though? That's on page, I always forget where it is. It's a different one than that one. I always forget where that one is. Anyway, the third line is different, so I'll just recite the third line. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit I create by listening to the teachings, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So let's just chant. We'll do the chant in the phonetics. 98, thank you. Yeah, I always forget where it is in this book. 98. O Sangye Chodan Toki Chonam La Janchu Bardu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Chinyengi Peso Namgi Drola Pencher Sangye Dru Parsho Sangye Chodan Toki Chonam La Janchu Bardu Dagni Kyab Suchi Agent Ningi Peso Namgi Drola Pencher Sangye Dru Parsho. Thank you. So this is about a buoyant cushion of our Dharma practice, and that's, I wanted to start with, I mentioned a bit about the 4 immeasurables. It's essential. And so I also wanted to mention, just for our visitors, our group today is a show and tell, and I don't know how many of you normally who come that know why Buddhist monks and nuns look like this and wear these clothes. So I thought it could be helpful to introduce some people. Are most of you familiar with that? So shaved heads basically are a sign of renunciation. So that's a renunciation, really a long word for giving something up. Letting go of something, renunciation. And in our tradition, renunciation is considered the first of the 3 principal aspects of the path. First of the 3 principal aspects of the path, of a whole path to enlightenment. But it's reduced down to 3 main words: renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Most of you are familiar with that, okay? And there's books you can read on the 3 principles of the path. One famous one by Lama Tsongkhapa, our patron saint. Directly behind me, right here. Yeah, this man in the middle with the yellow hat. That. So he's the leader of our tradition, who lived from 1347 to 1419. Was an incredible, really genius Buddha. Some incredible stories about him. So we're not going to have time for that today. So. Renunciation, but when we think of renunciation, we often think of we are giving away our money, giving away our house. It's not about stuff, it can be, but it's an attitude. And the fundamentals of it is you're giving up your suffering. So you're realizing you're suffering, you're struggling, and finally you say enough. And we've all had patterns in our lives that have come up like that, some negative things happening. And then we finally go, I can't do this way anymore. Enough. Like that. Some people have had cigarette habits, marijuana habits, alcohol habits, bad relationship patterns they've done. A certain way they are at work, they're a workaholic, and they finally went, I can't do this anymore, I'm sick. Like that. So there's many patterns like that we do in life. So it's really the beginning of having compassion for yourself. And that's really a very important part of our path, having compassion for yourself. But what happens with a lot of Buddhists, a lot of Tibetan Buddhists, is we said, so the second principle of the path is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. It's a Sanskrit term. Bodhi is enlightenment. Citta is mind. The mind of enlightenment. And the mind of enlightenment is, I want to become a Buddha so I can benefit all living beings perfectly. Help all living beings. Most people, most of you in this room, I have a feeling, I don't know all of you, have a heart that really would like to help people, would like to help in some way. And I find that in many different traditions, not just Buddhist traditions. For me, it's really the essence of all the religions in the world. It's really the essence. But what happens is, that's the spiritual part of those religions. That's the essence, to help others. They're all teaching the same thing. But then what happens is human nature gets involved. And human nature says, I have a little bit of a need to control you. And so I'm going to tell you to do it like this. That's not the essence of that religion. The essence is love, That solves everything, and how can I help? Like that. So it's beautiful. So in that way, we're all the same, really. We're all the same. Sure, we have slightly different distinctions and practices, of course, like that. And what's kind of neat is because there's so many different beings on the planet, there's a variety, so people can practice all these different things. But the real essence, you have to, pull away all the other gunk, and underneath is really this pure essence of love and caring and kindness, like that. So bodhicitta, this concept, and you can become a bodhisattva that's like a Buddhist saint, a Buddhist angel, like that, a bodhisattva warrior, So warriors are not going to war with people or things, they go to war with the imbalances in their mind. They go to war with delusion. Anything that keeps them from being peaceful, happy, kind, focused on helping, like that. So you need some compassion for yourself to practice that. So Tibetan Buddhists go, well, I'm supposed to be focused on others. No, it's to benefit all living beings, not other living beings. Not all other living beings, all living beings, and that includes yourself. You are a sentient being as well. All sentient beings, all beings with a consciousness. That includes yourself. So if you're not coming from a balanced place, it's really hard to help others. So this is really, some compassion for myself within reason, with a good motivation, with a nice bodhicitta motivation, right? So some care for myself so I can care for others. Lama Yeshe, one of our founders of this tradition, was always saying, be gentle with yourself, and then you'll be gentle with others. That. So renunciation is the beginning. That's why we shave our heads. It's great, because I travel a lot. I don't need to bring conditioner or a paddle brush, which I used to have because I had a mane of long hair. I think Robbie and Don may remember that, possibly. They knew me then. And I never have a bad hair day, like that. And it is easier. And now granted, I do get looks in the West. That's why sometimes I do like to be in monastic places or in India or Nepal where people understand what I am. And I can be in a sea of maroon there, where everybody looks like me, and it can be easier. I do see in the West, people will look at me at airports and sometimes at the grocery store, and I can see they're a little bit like with pity eyes, wondering if I'm having chemo. Some people have asked me that. Fortunately, that's not happening now. And then I'll see sometimes children will look at me like in some place, and then I see them asking their mother, she doesn't have any hair. They're afraid. It's different. But then if you smile, generally, all of a sudden the kid will start to smile back, and they can see it's not, not a scary person. So that's why we shave our heads. Venerable Chitso in the front row. Again, it's nice to have somebody that looks like me here, that we look together. Excuse me. So then we wear these robes. And so maroon, burgundy, which I'm happy in this tradition, I happen to like burgundy. Can you imagine if it was like, lime green? Not my best color, but so burgundy happened to be the color of the poorest dye in ancient Tibet. So associated again with poverty, like Catholic nuns, they take vows of poverty. So again, this was the scraps of the cheapest material. And so then if let's see, yeah, I can walk with this. So at the bottom of my robes, there's a line. Some of you I know can't see, but there's a line at the bottom of my robes. So the line shows that it was pieced together, pieces of material that were sewn together. And, in the old days. And then this is a skirt that really isn't supposed to be folded over, but I don't want it to fall down. So if you look at, the Buddha's wrapped up, but often you'll see the robes are up like this, and then you have a belt. And it was always funny when we got ordained. For me, it was a while ago when we got ordained, and you have to go up to the master, the preceptor ordaining you, 3 of you at a time, and they grab your robes. And one of my friends was just like, she's like, I just know my robe's gonna fall off when he does that, So you have this skirt, and then the skirt is folded. This is called a zen, my outer robe. This is called a shemtab, the lower robe. And then you have a donka, your shirt. So there's no buttons, there's no zippers or snaps. It's incredibly simple, like the Amish, who also has simple garb. And as a result, it's simplicity. It makes it easy. You don't have to take time to sew buttons on. You don't have to take time to deal with that. Now, some people revise their robes, and I've seen friends with zippered skirts, and they, okay, fair enough, whatever you want to do. And, sometimes we'll wear certain shirts that might have underneath a button or something, but it's really simple. So then the lower robe is folded, and it's all symbolic. Everything in Tibetan Buddhism is symbolic. So even if you see the imagery around the room, it's all symbolic. If you see kind of a more wrathful deity, I don't think they have many in this room because they're a little scary looking, but it's all symbolic of the wrath is just actually not anger, but transformed anger, because sometimes we need a little stronger help like that. So the robes, there's different ways you can fold, where some people have 2 folds in the back, but these represent the 4 noble truths, which is the first teaching the Buddha ever gave. There is suffering, there's a cause to the suffering, there's an end to the suffering, and there's a path to the end. So basically the folds behind you is there is suffering, and there's a cause, and that's what's passing away from me. And then in the front is where I'm headed. There's an end to the suffering, and there's a path to the end of the suffering. Okay? So then I have 2 points on my donka, on this shirt. So this is a reminder, and if you put these on with this reminder, it can be very helpful for your mind every morning, some mindfulness, which is helpful everywhere in life. So I have 2 points here, and they represent the fangs of the Lord of Death. So it's simply a reminder of impermanence and death, that I am going to die soon. And sorry to break it to you, but we all are. That's natural. And then there's, I forget, the blue line, I always forget. It's a lineage from the Chinese tradition, or, okay, something like that. I can't really remember that one. And so I just wanted to explain a little bit of why we look like this. The robes also, they're spacious, they're roomy, so it's easy to sit in them, and you can get heavy robes if you live in a cold area. You can have lighter robes if you live in a very hot area, and you're only allowed to have 2 sets, and technically, and so, because again, simplicity. And I know that some years ago, a Lama died at Tushita, our center in Dharamsala, India, where the Dalai Lama lives, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives. And so when he died in his room, they said all that was there was his 2nd set of robes and one of his ritual pieces, and I remember thinking, that's the way I want to go. Like, just, it's simple. Very simple for people. So because there's a number of you right now, I have a feeling, I've done this myself, who may be cleaning out a family house, your parents' stuff, because they didn't want to do it, or you're witnessing now, if you're younger, the accumulation of stuff that's either coming into your parents' house or your house. So be cautious now. Because my brother was saying you spend 20 years accumulating, and in his case, 30 years cleaning out. Don't waste your time doing that. It's really painful, and the emotional attachments to stuff, and just it's time consuming. And then the other issue is when he saw what I was doing at my parents' house, which was relatively simple, but still quite a job, of a packed attic and packed basement, and so then I did most of it myself, and then he is, I'll make this kind, he's a collector, and so finally at one point I said to him, please don't leave this to your kids to do. This is so laborious for me to have to do this, and emotional, and seeing their stuff. And so he's doing it now, it takes time, but so just thinking about that attachment, desire, all those kind of things, that. Okay. So that's a little bit about the path. And the other thing I wanted to mention about making life buoyant and having a buoyant cushion right now, as I mentioned before, of course, our motivation for anything, if you can layer it with bodhicitta, this enlightened attitude, you can practice everywhere in the world that way. I just mentioned a driving exercise of letting the person in, trying to refrain from a negative hand gesture in your car. Because think about when someone else sees that, how it goes into them. When you see if somebody does that to you, how you feel, right? But there's so many places to practice. There's so many places to practice right now. And I've mentioned here before, for instance, if you're going to the grocery store, if you're going, like, ways to practice doing that. So you can have a driving practice, and then you go into the grocery store. So what happens is the I takes over, the sense of self takes over. So most of us are conditioned that we have a very strong sense of self, okay? Because we misunderstand reality. So in Buddhism, we have the profound notion of emptiness, and not having a direct perception of emptiness, the true nature of reality, we have an overinflation of the sense of ourself. And so if somebody is dear to that self, and if somebody honors that self, then I project positivity on them and I like them. And if somebody interferes with the self and interferes with my agenda and harms me or anyone I care for, then what happens from the mind and negative seeds of karma in my mind, I project onto the reality aversion. I don't like them. Get away from me. And this is the way we go through space. Duality, based on a misunderstanding of reality, what I'll call a misknowing, K-N-O-W. We misknow reality every moment we breathe. So we're big in the space. We're the most important in the space, the most dominant. And here's another reflection of that dominance, is we can also fold in on ourselves and be less than we think. It's the same device of the ego. Whether you think you're super confident and great and I'm the best, or I'm nothing and I'm worthless. Same device of the ego. You're not understanding how you exist accurately. And we're all caught up in it, this duality. And it's the problem. It's why there's war in Ukraine right now. Because of that. Because of a misknowing. So what happens, and it's why there's war anywhere on the planet. It's why what's happening in Gaza is this misknowing. I mean, I'm bringing it down to Buddhist principles. There's obviously huge complexities as well, political complexities. So what we want to do, and what we're doing as Tibetan Buddhists, is can I keep poking at that reality and checking? And here's a way to do, and we'll go back to the grocery store in a little bit, is we get stories going, correct? Do you ever get stories going in your mind? And here's the thing, you see somebody walk in. Somebody walks in a room, and I think I talked about this the last time I was here. Did you ever go to a party, you go to a dinner thing, and or you're meeting people at a restaurant or a bar or whatever it is. You walk in, you've been looking forward to this for a long time. You've been really excited. You had the date on the calendar, and it's like, okay, it's tonight, and then you get dressed, and you're in the mirror, and you're checking, and the right this, and the right jacket, and okay, off you go. Now you're outside the door of the venue, and you're all excited, and you can't wait, and you know so-and-so's going to be there, and so-and-so's going to be there, and you walk through the door, a lot of people, right? You walk in the door, and then you see everybody, and there's the food, and there's the great, and everything's shiny and glistening, and you see, suddenly your eyes meet somebody across the room, someone you know, but you don't know them well, but it's always been pleasant, no problem, and you look across the room, they're talking to somebody, right? But as you glance over at them, they clearly turn and make eye contact with you, okay? And you see, and you kind of smile and do one of these. No big deal, just, And then they see you, and then they go back to the conversation they're having. There's no acknowledgement. They go back to the conversation. What's your experience of that? What would you do in that situation? How do you feel? Anybody? Anybody online?
I was going to say deflated.
So you feel deflated, okay? Other experiences?
I would probably think they didn't know that I was waving to them.
Okay, okay. I mean, these are all the, other experiences. Yeah, in the back. That's a completely that they don't respond and they just, okay, yeah, so no, you're not bothered. Yep. Right, okay. That's another response. Thank you. Anybody else?
Anyone on Zoom?
Yes. If you mistake them for someone else, yeah, did I really know them or did I mistake them for someone else? Yep. So we have all these responses. There's a number of people I know that, and maybe people don't want to say, but, oh, is there? Yeah, please. Something else? No, okay. No, I thought she wanted to say, yeah.
I was just going to say, it really depends. It depends, right? How well do you know the person? What's the nature of your relationship, blah, blah, blah. And it could be you felt a little dismissed by them or a little dissed by them or what have you. But it depends. You kind of judge the situation. Does it look like they're just so involved they may not have even seen you really? There's just a lot to consider.
Yes, there's a lot to consider. And one back here. One last one back here.
I think the point is that when you first see them. Oh, okay. To me, the point is that when you first see them, you're all happy to see them, and then when they ignore you, you're like unhappy. So they go from being your friend to like your not hated enemy, but your enemy.
Okay, so
Just like
interesting.
that.
So these are all the stories we get going, right? And so again, he perceived it as I was ignored, I feel deflated. And then we also get generational things. So I've somebody from a younger generation who goes, well, that's just normal. Very interesting, because that's how my experience with a lot of younger people that I teach, where there's no reaction. So they find it normal. No story started. That's okay. No, nothing wrong with that. So I also have to understand who I'm talking with. What age are they? And what, I was just telling Elise this morning, we were talking about, I teach a lot at colleges, universities, and high schools sometimes. So the first time I started doing it, I'm in an amphitheater, and they have computers, and the first thing they ask is to the teacher, do we need to take notes, or are we going to be quizzed on this life as a Buddhist nun? Okay, that was the talk. Okay, I do it at Northeastern. I think I have one coming up. Anyway, so they said, so then he goes, no. So all the computers shut. Great. Okay, so now I have a little bit more of their attention. There's a lot of people. And it's like an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm talking to try to just explain Tibetan Buddhism and how I became a nun and about making meaning in life. And you want to also, sometimes you want to make it light, and you might want to tell a joke, and there is no reaction whatsoever. And so there's a little thing in the back of my mind, like this was my first talk years ago there, and I just thought, there's a little thing in the back of my mind going, I'm bombing. You're like, they're just not resonating with this. Like, okay, I'm like, well, I did, this is my truth. I'm genuine about it. I'm not playing or acting anything. And then I leave, and then some of the kids came down the aisle, and they were like, that was amazing. And I was like, okay. Or the teacher later would send me a note and say, they said that was like life transforming. And I was like, how can you tell? There was nothing. So we were a different generation that was like calling out and throwing things and yay and laughing. And so now I understand. And when I teach, I don't. So now there's little bits of response. I don't expect anything now because it's a different time. Different people have different reactions. So, but look at the stories you get going, okay? And what happens is you have a story, let's say you're deflated by it. If it does affect you, you come in, but you were just on the other side of the door all happy. 2 minutes later, you're not happy now, right? And then you kind of go around and you go to the hors d'oeuvre table, and now you're not hungry, and now you find this, and then you suddenly, self-consciousness comes in, and all these things based on this story that you don't even know is true, but you believe it. We make stories all the time. We make stories all the time, and we're invested in them, and we believe them, and then you tell somebody else your story, and you want to get them on your side. He really did this. I saw it. Now, you don't know the person across the room. First of all, they could be in a conversation they are not happy in right now, and they want to be bailed out, and they look over and they see you, and they're a little bit like, get me out of here, and they're afraid if they wave or do something, the person talking to them will perceive that as rude. So they're right back in the conversation, but you have no idea. They're too far away. And like I said before, you don't even know if they just have gas, and there they are talking to the person. Uh-oh. You have no idea, but we make a story about it. We make a story, we believe in it, and then it reflects back. So again, you're the same person on the other side of the door as you were now that you're inside the door and saw one person. You got fixed up, you look nice, you liked how you looked, you're excited. Go and find the other people that you know here that you were excited to see. You didn't even know that person was going to be here. Never thought about them in the morning, and now they've ruined your evening? So please poke your stories. It's okay to have the story come up. They come up all the time in the mind of duality. It comes up all the time. Let it come up. And with basic mindfulness, I'm simply observing. Wow, I really think that guy's a jerk. Is he a jerk? Okay, but just let that come up. You don't have to get invested in those bubbles. They're going to fly up, air takes them away, and off they go. And now I can just move that story out, and I'm okay. I'm back to. But later, while we have meditation practices, this is really your buoyant cushion, is this regular, consistent meditation practice, a spaceful, quiet stillness. Please, every day in your life, please find that. Please find a way there and build that, because it helps you orient. So I don't have time now, I'm at the party, I can't analyze what's going on. And things are happening too quickly most of the time. But later, tomorrow, I'm going to go back, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to look at me coming in and find out why did I feel that way, or what that person, or the terrible person that I'm living with, or going to school with, or working with, or my neighbor, or the friend at school I don't like, or, and then really analyze, go back and analyze. All I'm seeing is negative, negative, negative. Is that the whole story? No. Because people are multifaceted. And the things that you don't like about them, Tibetan Buddhism says there's karmic imprints in your mind that are causing you to see the person and experience the person that way. And those are from negative tendencies and negative activities of my body, speech, and mind. Tibetan Buddhism says that's where it comes from. Karma, action. Every time I think, say, and do something, Tibetan Buddhism says it leaves an imprint in my consciousness, in my mind. And so the positive things I do think and say leave imprints of positivity that ripen in happiness for me, happiness and good fortune for me. And the negative things I do with my body, speech, and mind will ripen, cause imprints in my mind, and will ripen in future suffering for me. Like that, future suffering for me. Karma. That's how karma works in Tibet, according to Tibetan Buddhism. You don't have to believe that, but. So that's where it comes from. And that's why some people like eggplant and some people don't like eggplant. It's in your mind. It's not the eggplant. Okay, there's no inherent goodness or badness to the eggplant, is what Tibetan Buddhism says. Inherent means concrete, solidly existing good or bad. An independent goodness about the eggplant. Because if that's how it exists, okay, and there's an inherent goodness in eggplant, which people that like eggplant feel, okay, then everyone would have to like eggplant. It would be good for everyone. That's how inherently existent things are. They're frozen in time and space. They're always that thing. But it's not. Some people, so we have to then move this to people we don't like and people we overly like and are attached to, as well as things we don't like and things we're attached to. So it can cut the shopping addiction of attachment and desire. I need that thing, I want that thing, like that. And this is a way we've worked with shopping addictions or just your stuff. We want to buy stuff. Now we do it online. Now we do it online. We had a lovely conversation last evening about all the wonderful department stores I grew up with that are all closing, that are all gone, like that. Some people now that I meet don't even know what a department store is. They go, what do you mean, Target? That's a department store now. That's what replaced those other stores that were much nicer than Target, but it's a different time, like that. So, and I put terrible pressure on Elise of, the Horn and Heart Art tapioca pudding. So she's gonna have to deal with that. But I'm like, most of you are like, what? It's a Philly thing. It's a Philly thing, sorry. So, but again, please think about it. You know, I mentioned if you are online, and this is so succulent online, now they know exactly how to get you. They also knew how to do it in the department stores with sale signs, sales, clearance. So you're online, and you went online to get the cable, the new cable that you wanted because your old cable in the car broke and you want the thing for your phone. That's all you went online, and that's all in the morning you woke up and you're like, I've got to go online and get the cable. And now it shows you all the other delectable things you can buy. Okay? So the job is, if you want to cut some attachment and desire and lessen some of those things, your exercise is you're only allowed to get the cable that day. That's it. And you can mark and look at those other things. You're not allowed to buy them that day. And generally by the next day, if you really want it and need it, then you go back on and buy it. Normally you forgot about it. Because in the morning when you woke up, that other thing that they're showing you wasn't even in your mind. Didn't even exist for you. So can you resist some of that? And it makes the mind more peaceful. How much do we need? Can we be happy with what we have? But this is a realm of continual desire. More, more, more. I want. Where'd you get that? I like that. I have the red one, but you have the blue one. Maybe I'll get the blue one too. Do you need 2 of them? Really? Yeah. So just look at, but we're geared because we see other people have it. How many pairs of Asics running shoes do you need? How many fleece vests do you need? It's endless. It's endless. Okay? So just think about that. In the morning, I had no notion of that in my mind, and so it's a way we cut. And then again, trying to show up overall on the planet. This is our buoyant cushion to keep the meditation practice going or establish one. We have many different ways. I'm going to talk this afternoon because in this booklet is the Shakyamuni Buddha practice booklet I mentioned yesterday. It's in here. So it's easy to access. And I'll explain a couple things about that. So you set up some sort of reflective practice, okay? It doesn't have to be Buddhist if you're not Buddhist in the room, it's fine. Many traditions have meditation practices like that. But even just quiet stillness, you're agitated from work, some horrible grade you got on this exam, or this paper you have to write, or whatever's going on with the teacher, or the guy that you liked at school and now he's with somebody else, and on and on. It's endless. It's endless. But if I can come back to this still place, quiet, safe, create a little nest. It doesn't have to be fancy. Put your favorite shawl there if it's this season, whatever, light a little candle, whatever, and you just sit and empty the mind of the negative self-speak, right? Empty the mind of that and just let the stories sift out. And then analyze some of the stories. If there's big stories coming up all the time, go in there. Why do I keep seeing negative qualities about this person? Over and over, and I find that I'm afraid around them. They're disturbing my space. I don't want to be near them. I try to avoid them wherever I can at any meetings, but I can't seem to totally avoid them. Then you do the work on the cushion, and you analyze. Because even that person, and you're very clear about all the negative aspects, right? Do they have any positive qualities? Do they have any positive qualities? Okay? Look at some of the leaders today that we might be challenged by. Some of the leaders, just think, right? We're pretty clear on some negative aspects of them, right? Would you say? In fact, does that get over-exaggerated in your mind at times? And then if you dwell on that, think about how it creates anxiety for you. Think about how it creates some anxiety. Okay. And then, so what if I find a way to lessen that focus on them in my mind? What are ways to do that? What are ways to lessen the focus? Anybody? What's a quick way to lessen the focus on, all this stuff in the news and all? What's a quick way to
Just stop watching it.
stop watching it?
Yeah.
Less attention on the phone of that over. I have a friend where it's just the continual, this one aspect of that and this. I said, why don't you just turn the TV off? Stop reading the news story. Why is it, she's like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Like, over and over. So be cautious as well when you bring a story to someone else. You're disturbed. And sometimes I've actually said to people, I've got this thing going on in my mind. It's about politics right now. Are you in a space to talk about it? Sometimes they'll go, no. And I'll go, okay, no problem. No worries. Or they'll go, yeah. And then sometimes people will come to me and I'll just go, how about very short? Because it goes over and over. You tell other people, then you're etching in your mind those stories. You're etching the thing. So take a moment. I want you to go back to whatever world leaders you're considering for a moment, right? Any positive qualities? Okay. Okay, but wait, think about the power and the greed and how they rose up into their position. I think it's kind of impressive. That they have a quality, they have some karmic quality to lead big countries. That's something interesting. Not that all of us would want to do that, but I mean, that's interesting how they really have some sort of incredible influence with speech, with actions. Some of it's motivated by fear and things like that. But that's an interesting quality. Maybe some people don't see that as positive. But wielding that kind of power, that's very interesting to have that on the planet, And maybe they're good fathers, grandfathers, partners. Maybe they're very, very good friends. Now, we don't know these things about them, but that's, years ago I used to think of Saddam Hussein. I mentioned this yesterday. And it was a challenge at one point with him for many people. So I read a story about him and his grandsons and I was thinking about him as a grandfather and how he'd be with his little 3-year-old grandson. I thought, I bet that was pleasant. I bet he was like a great father and that grandfather in that sense. People are multifaceted, so there's always some other aspect that, Now here's another thing, to grow compassion from our heart. This is what we also need to do. For ourselves and for others, but to grow compassion, okay, is think about how lost these leaders are, okay? How big the misknowing in their minds is. Because that's where it comes from. We misunderstand reality, so we have the problems we make in our world on the small level. They make it on a global level, inflicting harm on many, many people, okay? That's clear, like that. But what a mistake. It's coming from a mistake. The fundamental mistake in Buddhism, not knowing reality, not having a direct perception of emptiness, this lack of inherent existence that we impute on everything. We solidify everything, right? We'll say, my cup. There's really no inherently existent cup there. There's a cup that has a bottom, functions like a cup, hole in the top to hold liquid, like that. It has a handle, it's made of a certain material. All that is here. We're clear on that, okay? But an inherently existent cup, meaning it exists for all time unchanging, this is made up of molecules that are changing every moment. And that would mean it doesn't, if it's inherent, it doesn't come from anything else. It's not a product. It's always this. But we know it can't exist like that. It's disintegrating right now as I'm holding it in a slow manner. Okay, but that's not what we impute on the cup, solidly existing cup there. Now here's the problem. First I impute on the cup, it's solidly existing. Cup is mundane, but I'm just saying we do this on my kid, myself, my computer, my phone, my car, right? And we use my my and mine, creates so much suffering, okay? So then first I have the mistaken appearance of how the cup exists, inherently, concretely, for all time. That's the first mistake. And the second mistake is when I then label mine. And if you threaten this, I'm going to be upset. But I mean, on any level, my kid, my car, my dog, that's a problem. And that's where all our suffering starts. So sometimes I'll actually use it and say, the cup I use, the room I stay in, the car I drive. Like just a little, it just deflects a little bit of that, did you just ding my car? Did you just get, and I've heard people driving. Woman came into our class one night in California. We did a lot of driving exercise because everyone drives too much. And a woman came in furious. And she came in and we had a big class. What's going on? She was on a really dangerous roadway. We know the road, little winding mountain roadway. What happened? Well, and then the guy was speeding, and then he got into my lane. He burst into my lane suddenly. My lane. I said, I've never seen your name on that roadway. Did you build the roadway? But my lane, on a freeway. It's my lane, okay? The ownership, my lane. And then suddenly she realized that the reason, the fury, what was underneath it, she was afraid she was going to have an accident. Fear. Underneath the fear, she thought she was going to lose control of the car. And didn't have control to have the guy, you need to be over there. You can control somebody in another car. Good luck with that one. Okay? So all these things of, considering, so then we have these world leaders truly lost. Like I'm lost like they are because I have a misknowing of reality. I don't have a direct perception of reality. So we're the same like that. So we have something in common with them. And here's another thing we can use with these world leaders. Tibetan Buddhism says, we all have Buddha nature. Everyone with a consciousness has Buddha nature. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you're a Buddha. Okay? It means you have a potential in your mind that can ripen into a fully realized being. I have that. Putin has that. I believe he has that. Okay? Now you go, but my God, are you kidding? But some people have more veils of obscuration covering their Buddha nature. And we know that. We have some people, you meet some people that are just so kind out of the gate. And people want to be near them. They go, she's so nice. She's always helping everybody. And then you meet some other people where they're always talking about themselves. Well, so we have a whole range of people. So for me, the really nice, sweet people, little less veils covering the Buddha nature is like more shining closer to that. So if these world leaders are really challenging us, harming a lot of beings, wow, really thick veils, how can we not have compassion? And Buddhism believes in karma, so the negativities, the harm they're creating is just going to create so much suffering for themselves. So much suffering for themselves in future experiences, and we believe in future rebirths. Like that. So much pain and suffering. Like that. And karma takes care. Karma takes care, we believe. It's a law, we would believe. So because the mind has no beginning, no end, according to Tibetan Buddhism, I'm not talking about the brain, that is matter that dies with your body. Consciousness, according to Tibetan Buddhism, in its most subtle experience, is inside a very subtle energy system, kind of at the heart center, around that area. And that's why you notice, if you get alarmed, sometimes you feel gripping in your heart. Or we feel gripping in another energy center called a chakra, a wheel, like the crown or the throat or your stomach, like that. And there's one at the heart. And we sometimes feel a little bit more, feel something there. The mind is there. Mind is there moving. So most subtle experience of the mind has always a previous moment that causes it. So there's no first moment. Whatever first moment, Buddhism's going to say there's another moment before that caused that moment. There's another moment before that caused it. And every subsequent result, is the cause of another moment. And then that will cause another moment. So there's no end of the mind. Consciousness, it goes on. So when we finish with this form, most subtle mind goes on and has other experiences and then comes back in another form, takes another form. So based on the imprints in the subtle mind, most subtle mind, that dictate what kind of form you'll take. So if somebody's creating a lot of suffering now on a global scale and things, the karma's going to take care, right? And that future rebirth may be full of suffering until they clean up the negativities they created. That's what Tibetan Buddhism says. So before we finish, is it noon we finish? Okay, questions. Is this helpful? It's helpful? So I do want to say, please find that still, quiet, still space for yourself, somehow. A place where you can just process and tell yourself in the space, too, I'm okay. I'm good enough. I'm doing the best I can. And also, the other thing I would say is please find meaning in your life now. So many of you are already there, right? Please, if you're not sure, start now. Don't wait anymore. Find meaning in your life, okay? You'll always be happy. Don't follow the money. Don't worry about this or that. Obviously, you have to take care of practical things. You want to be able to support yourself. You want to be able to live a full life happily and things. But it's really about what is the juicy place in your heart when you're doing an activity. And some people are exploring now. Maybe they're younger and they're exploring what they might like to do in the future, what they might like to work at or be or... So sometimes you hit on something that you are just so joyful doing this activity, then do more of it. Pursue that, and everything else will fall in line. Pursue, go there, and I find that the key for me has been finding something that's helping you help others. Somehow giving back, like having a focus of, I want to try to take care of, do something good that helps lots of people. That kind of stuff really feeds the meaning in your life, but you have to find for yourself and check. Okay, please, any questions?
And if you are online, you can just raise your hand or unmute and get our attention. Or you can put it in the chat.
See who else is online. Welcome, David. Sorry I missed you guys this weekend.
I want to be really careful here. I think one of the problems that we have with these world leaders who, like me, and I'm like them in this misknowing, ignorance, and so forth. And so I can see that we are equal in that area. But unlike me, I don't have the desire to hurt, to harm. I don't have the desire to instill fear. I don't have the desire to take over someone's home and say, you know what, this is my place now, and you got to get out. And I think that's where the problem is. I can have compassion for Trump. I can have compassion for Putin. I can have compassion for the men and women who are in prison who have murdered and stuff like that. I can have compassion for them because I understand that out of ignorance they've done these things, not knowing. But at the same time, I know that what I'm seeing is not just an illusion. You know, I know that what I'm seeing is real. People are in fear. My wife can't sleep at night. She's German. Her parents came out of Hitler Germany and stuff like that. They lost a child because they had to leave their home. She can't sleep at night. So I know this is not an illusion.
How do you know it's not an illusion?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that I think that I'm not going to, if you're hurting, if you're worried about being deported, I'm not going to say, well, that's not real.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that.
So then you ask yourself, and this is what I'd say for everyone, is a lot of people have fear and anxiety now and are outraged and angry and things like that. So what happens is you have to check, number one, is when you get angry, and this, for me, this goes, I'm tight, and it creates illness and stuff like that, real true discomfort and fear as well. And then what happens is you tend to want to put it on someone else and share it with someone, like, oh my God, people talk and they'll look at news stories and go, I can't believe that, and all these things. Okay, so then you're not creating harm, so less veils to your Buddha nature is what it's saying. So these other people, more veils. But when I get angry and if I start trashing somebody with my speech about it, opinions and things like that, then the story gets bigger, the negativity goes out there. Those ripples go out to everybody. Feels like that. So we can have constructive opinions, and say, I'm really challenged by this, and, but it only affects me necessarily. And if I hate somebody and hate a world leader, they don't even know who I am. Doesn't affect them in the least. Barely. I'd say maybe some ripples go up, but it does affect me. So we have to find a way to calm that down, to realistically approach it and look at it safely, constructively, and so then you ask yourself, what can I do? So first mindfulness comes up and I approach and just go, wow, huge fear. I am toppled. And some people have panic attacks. It gets really serious, panic attacks. So you learn things of like mindful breathing, meditation is a huge component, lessening the news stuff out there, lessening the certain reactionary different news sources and all that. And most of it is garbage. Most of it is somebody's opinion. I miss Walter Cronkite, okay? He was the truth, yes, thank you. Yeah, Walter. We don't have that anymore. So this is just a world system, how it's going. So then I lessen that stuff because I don't buy into it. I don't believe a lot of it. Okay, but I do look at news because I travel a lot and I want to know if this country's safe, what's going on, what's the regime, but I limit. So then you reduce it. So you ask yourself, what can I do? Right? And yesterday we mentioned a whole list of things you can do to participate, right? And then there's stuff I can't do anything about. Then I have to practice letting it go and do my meditation and find ways to wake myself up, to stay buoyant, to stay balanced and centered, so I keep that bodhicitta motivation going, so I can help as many beings as possible and help your wife and just be there for her and understand the fears are real. So I mindfully observe them arising. And then I apply all the different techniques and antidotes that I have. And then if I decide I want to take action in a certain way, we had a whole list yesterday, that's your personal individual decision to do like that. I don't know if that speaks to that.
Yeah, I think that it does. So what I do is I try to use this, like what these people are showing me, right? People that are like that, they're showing me two things, right? And one is how not to be. So I'm very grateful to them for that. I really truly believe. Thank you so much for showing me how not to be. And then also that they're giving me an opportunity to examine my mind and to really look at, well, what am I thinking? How, if I'm thinking this, if I want you dead, if I want this, how am I different than you? And so I try not, I try not to go there. I do try to stay informed because I think it's important to know what's going on, but I try to use that as instructive. How can that benefit me? How can I use that in a way that will benefit me to help me to become a better person?
Sure. And also, instead of how not to be, we're clear on that. Like, that's one thing to look at. But what about how to be? What about inspiring examples in all of our traditions? How to be. All the religions have inspiring people. One thing I also wanted to dedicate today is also for Pope Francis, who's struggling right now with very critical health. And I would like to direct some energy. And I remember being at a teaching years ago in Dharamsala when Pope John Paul was passing away. And His Holiness stopped the teaching and said, can we have a moment of silence? Because the Pope is going into a deep sleep soon. Like that. So there's many inspiring people out there, beings, whether they're political leaders, religious leaders, teachers, other people that there's holy beings and special beings I find everywhere. The cab driver, the grocery store clerk can be, there's people. So again, the more kindness coming out of me, it over reflects back to me. And when I'm in a bad mood, that over reflects back to me. So again, I'm not saying don't participate and do there's levels where silence is not a response. Like we need to speak up, and then there's times when I need to do my practice. So you have to check each thing, and you have to wisely proceed and participate. But I also think there are inspiring examples of people that faced incredible hurdles. I would even name His Holiness the Dalai Lama, left, blown out of his country, and then had to stand by and watch 1.3 million of his country people murdered, tortured. They're still imprisoned. They're still tortured. They're still, and have to struggle with years later that some of the younger people felt a response was to self-immolate in 2008, to try to protest that China was hosting the Olympics. So another 160, 200 people died by setting themselves on fire as protests, and nothing happened. Another 250 lives gone because, so again, how do we, it's tragic, it's horrible. It's horrible what goes on in the Middle East. It's horrible what goes on in Ukraine and Russia and Sudan. They never talk about Sudan because they're dark-skinned, right? It's not that important. It's horrible what's going on there. Just tragic. So again, I want to stay somewhat balanced in things, but I'm going to engage when I think I can, and some of it I can't do anything about. But be a good person, be a kind person. We try our best, yeah. Thank you.
I find one of the things that helps me a lot is to really visualize and imagine what it would be like if all of these people became Buddhas, the people that right now I have trouble with. And that what can I do to take this world forward so that we become Buddhas, all of us, including those most difficult ones now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not planning to see it in this particular lifetime.
You never know.
But you never know.
You never know.
Right?
You never know.
But that really helps me to, just to imagine that world.
Yes.
And work
yes.
towards it.
I mean, that's tantric practice. You create a tantric pure realm where you're visualizing this positive result, not pie in the sky. I mean, this is after ages of practice and foundation and things like that, but having a balance of that in life. And because I have Buddha nature, that potential's there. So I like to have hope. That's my hope, is eventually, and things change. Those of you that remember, some of you might be too young, the Berlin Wall, remember when that came down? Whoever thought that was going to happen? But again, karmic conditions. Suddenly the minds of beings on the planet had a certain something ripening, very positive, and you get this leader, Gorbachev, comes in and suddenly he goes, this system is not working. It's not working at all. Countries were bankrupt, and so let's make a change. Very spacious, open, like who thought that would happen? Never think that a black man was going to be elected president of the United States. Who thought that could happen, And Mandela getting out of prison. And I mean, you could go on of things like that and people say it's a miracle. Buddhism says no, the karmic conditions are in the mind of those beings that experience that. So again, what is your reality showing you? Coming from your mind. I'm not laying a trip on you and saying you're bad. It's a strong time. So part of that for me says, I happen to be on this path. I need to do more practice. Now I'm more convinced of my path than ever. I need to do more practice, make sure that I stay even more balanced, because a lot of people, and I want to help even more. I'm just going to keep helping, trying to be a good example when I can, but I make mistakes too. I'm an ordinary person. I'm not anybody special. And I'm doing the best I can. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do. And things change. The roller coaster goes up and down in samsara. Samsara means to cycle, Sanskrit word, to turn. And we're turning through a mess. So for me to ever think there's going to be happiness and wonderful, but I can head to something like a Pure Land, something really special, but in samsara, it's not a fixable situation. It's always going to show suffering. So it doesn't surprise me that much. But again, things will swing back and and that's its ride. So let's, one more question. Okay.
Hi, Venerable Amy. Last time you were here, you made a comment and you said we need to learn how to participate with our karma. And I've thought about that a lot. Could you give some more on that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what I was talking about. Because people, it's hard to understand karma when you first come to this. And it simply means action again. It's the movement of your mind in Tibetan Buddhism, the movement of your mind. So my mind creates for me activity with my body, speech, and mind. And those activities will lead to imprints in my consciousness. And so people say, well, how is it? And does karma just happen to you? Or is it? But then I'd say we can participate in our karma, which is about choices. So every moment we're faced with choices. I mean, it could be, do you want water or do you want green tea? That's mundane. That's easy. But then you're faced with choices. And so one of the things that helped me in life was in choices, and I used to work in politics, so I was in it, and because I wanted to help people. I thought that was a way to bring about positive change in the world, And it was quite different when I worked there because there seemed to be, maybe I was naive, but there seemed to be a little bit more kindness in Congress in the United States, and there were alliances, so people weren't kind of like, well, you're a Democrat, so I can't work with you. Now it's kind of like that, it's really separate, but it used to be that people made relationships friends, so you had a very progressive senator that got this far conservative guy, but they had a personal friendship, or they golfed together, or they shared something together, and as a result of that alliance, which you're never going to see today, very rarely, they somehow, one of them would say, I know you need the gun bill. I don't really agree with it, but I need this thing for Social Security. Hey. And some of them were co-authoring bills together. That was happening a lot. There was friendships, as they said, across the aisle. So again, part of our role is to make positive relationships with as many people as possible. You can be friends with everybody. You can. Some of it takes a big effort, but you can have positive relationships with everybody. If it's an enemy and somebody you don't like, coworker you're struggling with, somebody at school you're struggling with, a genuine compliment goes so incredibly far. But it has to be sincere. But it can be as easy as, and I remember years ago, I was in school and this girl, she was kind of powerful, and I, saw her, and I was always intimidated around her, and I wanted to kind of be in the group, and then one day, and she was always like looking me up, and so one day I just came by and I really liked her shoes, very, very low key, and I just walked by and I said, oh, I love your shoes. And that was it. She was all like happy to see me, but I mean, seriously, there's been little things I've done where suddenly the person has an experience of you where they get positive feedback from you, and people like that. So they're going to gravitate. They go, well, she's okay. She liked my shoes. But seriously, people like that. So they respond and they go, she commented on my hair looked nice. Like, that's a person I want to be around. Because we like people that are kind to us and say nice things to us. And you know if it's genuine or not BS, but the real stuff can start as we say, it breaks the ice. So it can create a little bit, and it's scary to do that sometimes. But sometimes so participating in the karma with these choices, and what I started to do on bigger things of job things, where I was going to live, which friends partners, relationships I was going to have, was trying to find health, like that it was a healthy thing, and that very much so was, especially as I got into Dharma and Buddhism, what's the biggest benefit here, I would ask. When I'm faced with what was going to be the biggest benefit, not just for myself, but a bigger benefit. So first of all, what was also going to take care of me and make sure I could do this realistically, and would it have a bigger beneficial result? So that's kind of what I mean by participating in your karma when you have those choices, and when, because that's what creates the karma, is I'm about to make a decision and do something or say something or think something. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So let me stop there, if that's okay. I hope this was helpful. We do have a session this afternoon, and I know we're a little late, and if it's possible, I was going to talk to the group a little bit, just quickly. the group that was visiting. But I'd like to dedicate whatever positive energy we've created, any merit we've made from this time together, and may we invest it in our opening our hearts and minds with peace and gentleness towards ourselves, and also to help us move along a path that will help us reach a place where we're unlimited in helping all living beings, all living beings. I'd also like to dedicate for Pope Francis to have his condition improved and for him to have relief and no discomfort. For Venerable Ingrid, one of our dear nun friend who passed away a few days ago in California, for her to have, and all the beings who have recently died, to have a good rebirth and become enlightened to benefit all living beings. For peace on this planet immediately, and all the ends of all the wars and hostilities, and especially hatred, fear, and attachment and ignorance in our minds. And may the minds of all the totalitarian leaders be turned to bodhicitta and emptiness immediately. And for the long lives of our teachers, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and for the return quickly of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and the flourishing of all of our centers, especially Kadampa Center. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I think we're planning to do a picture. Is that still the,
right.
the plan? Where's our photographer?
So can we do a quick group photo? Would that work? They mentioned they wanted to do that. And then can we just have our lunch break a little longer, like
Yes.
later to start? Thank you.
So tall
you.
people in the back. If I can get somebody to move the TV over to one side.
Thank you. So let's do this.
Bye, everyone online. We'll start again probably about like 1:45, let's say, 1:45.
Okay.
Is that right? Hang on.
Yes, thank you.
Somebody looks surprised. Yeah, we're supposed to start at 1:30, so 1:45. Okay?